Well, this is a double review. First of Squatch Detective Radio, which was actually pretty good, except for the last half hour, and I'll explain that in a second. And also Finding Bigfoot, the second episode of Finding Bigfoot. Squatch Detective was actually pretty good in the first half hour, because they focused on things such as Finding Bigfoot from last Monday. Also they also focused on Steven Stroyford talking about how it's very difficult to get into Bluff Creek, into the Bluff Creek area, more particularly the Patterson-Gimlin film site, but more so into the Bluff Creek area, period. Apparently there's some debris that is preventing people from getting in there. So I like that aspect of the show. Last half hour of the show was devoted to Tom Biscardi and talking about Tom Biscardi. Now, I want to hear a show about the latest happenings in the Bigfoot field. I don't want to hear about Tom Biscardi. I'm sorry. I mean, if Steve sees this, Steve, you know I love you. You're a great guy and everything, but you gotta let Biscardi go. I know you want to inform us and everything about Biscardi. You want to keep us abreast of what's going on, but you know, some of us, we want to hear about the latest happenings in the Sasquatch field. We don't want to hear about Tom Biscardi. I mean, personally, I just don't feel like there should be a half hour devoted to Tom Biscardi. I mean, personally, I don't care what the man's doing. I don't personally care. Unless it affects me personally, I don't care. I mean, I've just kind of gotten Biscardi burnout, you might say. So I'm pretty much, you know, Steve, it's nothing against you. It's just that, you know, I'm sick of hearing about Biscardi. I realize that you're trying to do a service by telling us about Biscardi, and that's fine. You know, devote maybe 5-10 minutes to Biscardi a show. Fine. I'll live with that. But a half an hour? No. I would much prefer to hear about other aspects of the Sasquatch mystery. But anyway, no, it was actually a pretty great show. Steven Stroyford from Bigfoot Books was the guest. It was actually a pretty good show. Wouldn't call it great, but it was pretty good. Don't know what Steve has planned for next week, but it'll begin at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. www.blogtalkradio.com/The Squatch Detective or SquatchDetectiveRadio.com. Now, Finding Bigfoot, the second episode. I took some copious notes, as I always tend to do. The location for Finding Bigfoot this week was Gadsden County, Florida, in the Panhandle. They were in that area looking for the skunk ape. Southern Bigfoot, or as Matt Moneymaker calls them, Southern Bigfoots, are red and shorter than Sasquatch and called skunk ape. There was a family named the Bridges, Caroline and Bill. They claimed long-term interaction at their home. They had a handprint on their door and a footprint that they cast. They actually cast a footprint. Construction in the area is speculated may be contributing to the sightings. There was a bent-over bird feeder that was found in the Bridges' yard. The middle pole was bent. Bobo bends the pole, Bobo is able to bend the pole, which indicates that a human could have done it, but why would a human go to the trouble of messing with somebody's head like that? It took hands and opposable thumbs to bend that bird feeder pole. And the one thing that was done with the bird feeder was it was broken over a branch or something, and then the gaskets inside were wrapped around were wrapped around the log. The footprint cast was shown. It was quite impressive, I think, and fascinating. One night, this horrible growl awakened Caroline, and then this thing reached into the house through the screen door by opening the screen door and just putting its hand on the inside of the door, leaving a large, long handprint. Fingers and thumbs were long, and the hair was greasy and oily and nasty. The handprint was, based on the video, the handprint was measured. It was 11 inches long. And they did a recreation with Bobo. Bobo put some lotion on his hand, and just did the, just kind of put a handprint on the inside of the door. Turned out his handprint was only 8 inches. Now, Renee was skeptical. She thought maybe, it's probably just a smudge. But the one in the video was not smudged. Caroline says that Bobo's is not even close to the one in the video. The team decided to stay in the area overnight. They did something called the Dark Man technique. They employed that technique in which a volunteer, which was Renee, sat in the forest with no lights, no electronics to see if something is attracted. Bobo did a vocalization from the deck of the house, which evokes something close to Renee, a knock, a wood knock, probably edited in. A growl is heard, probably also edited in. Cliff and Matt make sure it wasn't Bobo making that sound. Bobo confirmed it wasn't him. Bobo catches something walking in the woods, some sort of entity walking upright. The mystery blob disappears after Bobo just stumbled and fell down some steps. Some knocks and grunting growls are heard as well, and the group packs it up and heads to where they're staying. They decide to head to the Big Cypress Wildlife Preserve to do some research. Bobo actually knows a couple of Seminole Indians at their village. They take an airboat to that village. Herbert is the man who decides to talk about the Sasquatch. Generally, the older generation does not speak to outsiders about Sasquatch. Herbert says that they are humans, not animals. Herbert has seen one himself. And we see him talk about his sighting, by the way. A fellow named Ron talks of his sighting where he has seen one on his land adjacent to the Seminole land. Matt and Bobo interview an impressive eyewitness named Billy, as do Cliff and Renee. They interview Herbert with two very impressive stories. A third witness, which is Ron, is also interviewed where he saw a skunk ape. The group decides to use an unmanned drone to pinpoint where they should narrow down their search, which they do. Then the group, they split up, they go into the Everglades and find, well, I won't give too much away, but still, not a bad episode. I would give it 7 out of 10. A 7 out of 10. It was better than the first episode, I'll say that much. It was certainly better than the first episode. Next Sunday, I think they head to... I have to check the schedule. I can't remember where they're supposed to be going next week, but it'll begin at 10 Eastern, 9 Central on Animal Planet. Check your local listings for time and channel. And for Law Talk radio shows, as always, we do encourage you to please tune in and support great research.